Welcome to The Inside Story. I'm Billy Hollowell, and I am joined today by Ryan Foley from the Christian Post. We're going to be diving into the story everyone has been talking about, Harrison Butker and his viral commencement speech. Lots to unpack there. Ryan, how you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. You have been covering this story, and I'll tell you, it's been interesting because I have thought, okay, this story is going to die down. People are going to stop talking about it, but the opposite has happened every day. It feels like there's some new element, new perspective on this story. But before we get into it, take us through what in the world happened here with this commencement speech and why you think it's made so many waves.
Well, Harrison Butker, who's a football player for the Kansas City Chiefs, he gave the commencement speech at Benedictine College in Kansas a couple weeks ago. It's a Catholic college, and he's Catholic, so he talked about stuff that you would probably say at a Catholic college. He condemned abortion, surrogacy, and euthanasia, as well as the growing support for degenerate cultural values and dangerous gender ideologies. He also directed a message to the women in the audience, suggesting that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world, as opposed to their careers. And he encouraged them to disregard the outside noise, calling on them to put their careers above everything else, noting how his wife gave up her career to be a stay at home mom and would say, heck no, if she was ever asked if she regretted her decision. The speech also condemned bishops for not pushing back harder against COVID-19 worship restrictions.
Yeah, there's so many different elements to this that are so interesting to me. Obviously, he didn't name President Joe Biden, but he was referring to him very clearly a number of times in the speech on some of the issues that you just referenced. Can you just recap, specifically what he said about President Biden?
Well, he said that our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross at a pro abortion rally. He also expressed concern that Biden has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people it appears that you can be Catholic and pro choice, whereas Catholic Church teaching is clear that abortion is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's interesting because he obviously made a decision going in on this speech that he was going to, as you were saying, he was going to say Catholic things. He was going to say things that maybe some people saw as controversial. It's not often that a star as big as him in the football world goes and says all of this in one speech so openly. And obviously it went viral. What are his critics currently saying? What are they saying? What are they arguing? And what are their demands?
More than 200,000 people have signed a petition calling on the Kansas City Chiefs to dismiss Butker from their roster, calling his remarks at the commencement address sexist, homophobic, anti trans, anti abortion, and racist. And they also said that his views reinforce harmful stereotypes that threaten social progress and create a toxic environment that hinders our collective efforts towards equality, diversity, and inclusion in society.
You know, so this petition has 200 and some odd 20,000 people who have signed onto it. It's kind of remarkable because the petition's calling for him to be fired and canceled essentially, right? It's not, just rebuke what he said. It's we want him removed from this team. That's a pretty remarkable thing for hundreds of thousands of people to sign on to. Why do you think, and you've covered a lot of stories just like I have, usually a story rises and it falls relatively quickly. A story like this, right, where it's not some consequential political thing, it's just a moment, and usually people get over it. But that has not happened. This story has garnered a lot of attention. Why do you think it continues to make so many waves?
Well, there are a bunch of different reasons. I mean, I guess it's significant because the Kansas City Chiefs have won two Super Bowls in a row, and you could also say that it comes in the context of cancel culture where they expect companies to cave to pressure whenever there's a demand to get rid of somebody for saying something that they don't like, and then There's also the debate within Catholicism about the need to embrace tradition, which is kind of what Butker was saying, versus there's a movement within Catholicism that it has to start basically accommodating LGBT ideology in order to remain relevant. So there's that debate. And then many people who have come out in defense of Butker have pointed out that a lot of the opposition to his speech comes from college students and young people who have a tendency to express sympathy with Palestinians and the terror group Hamas in the ongoing Middle East conflict. Bill Maher, who's no Catholic or conservative for that matter, noted that while college kids and the young people find this absolutely abhorrent, referring to what Butker said, they're demonstrating for Hamas. He contrasted how it's not just an opinion in Hamas that you stay home and have the babies, but rather a law. And then Sage Steele, who used to work for ESPN and now has her own podcast, talked about how protests on college campuses have called for death to Jews, and wondering why Butker's remarks are causing all this outrage, but the anti-Semitic protests on college campuses, in her opinion, have not.
It's interesting to see so many people come forward, and as you mentioned, you look at a Bill Maher obviously being an atheist, not agreeing at all, and even when he spoke out about this, saying, "Look, I couldn't be more different from this guy, but I don't see what the crime is here." And it's intriguing looking at the reaction because there was so much in that petition, but it did seem like his comments to women were the thing to the female graduates that really riled the most people up in terms of the concentrated frustration that I was seeing. So here's a question. We obviously have heard from people who are defending him, a lot of people defending him, in addition to obviously the massive petition of people going against him to try to cancel him. But what have we heard, if anything, from Butker? Has he said anything at all in response to this controversy?
Well, I was just checking his social media, specifically his Twitter, or X, as I guess it's now called, and it's empty, so I haven't seen or heard anything from him in the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, see, that's interesting too, that my theory here is that he knew that this was probably going to spark some outrage, and he didn't care, and he chose to say what he was going to say regardless, right? And I think that's interesting to me that he's willing to do that. Not everybody is willing to do it. But Ryan, I appreciate you breaking it all down today, taking us through the story. And we're going to put links to the stories you've covered on this because there's a number of them and lots of different elements and angles on that. But thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and enjoy the long weekend.
Yes, you as well, and everyone else out there, make sure you enjoy the Memorial Day weekend, remembering the sacrifices that so many paid for our freedom this weekend. And we will be back next week with another episode of The Inside Story. Until then, head on over to christianpost.com. We'll see you next week.